Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to the luncheon of the 2025 Yushan Forum. We had insightful discussions in the morning, and now it's time to take a well-deserved break, recharge, and connect over a delicious meal. And to kick off, we would like to welcome the host of the luncheon, His Excellency Ambassador Francois Chizhongru, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the ROC Taiwan, to give us his remarks. Please welcome His Excellency with a warm round of applause.
Dr. Xiaoxin Wang, Michael, Chairman of the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation, distinguished guests from home and abroad, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, 大家午安, good afternoon. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it is my great pleasure to host this luncheon at the 8th Yushan Forum. The success of this event conveys a powerful message that leaders of government, business, and civil society across the Indo-Pacific and Europe stand with Taiwan in defending the values of freedom and democracy and safeguarding the peace and prosperity of the region against authoritarian aggression. As China's military capability continues to grow, its intimidation and the coercion of Taiwan pose an increasingly serious threat to the status quo across the Taiwan Strait and the stability of the Indo-Pacific region. Chinese fighter jets and the drone regularly cross the median line of the Taiwan Strait. Its military aircraft and ships encircle Taiwan. And its disinformation campaign and the cyber attacks have intensified. China has also picked fight with its neighbor in the South China Sea and is conspiring with Russia and other dictatorships in the acts of upheaval to expand authoritarianism worldwide. In the face of such aggression and coercion, we are encouraged to see more and more partners around the world who are willing to push for Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations, deepen bilateral economic and trade relations with Taiwan, and uphold a free and stable Indo-Pacific. Taiwan looks forward to working more closely with the global democratic community to defend our shared value against authoritarian expansionism and strengthen mutually beneficial ties. With that in mind, I am delighted to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Dr. Mantas Adomenas, is Secretary General of the Community of Democracies. His institutions plays a crucial role in advancing democracy worldwide, strengthening democratic resilience, countering disinformation, protecting civil society, and promoting the participation of women and young people in public life. Dr. Adomenas is also a long-term friend of Taiwan. He was a member of the Lithuania-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Group for many years. And he demonstrated strong support for Taiwan while serving as a Lithuanian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs from 2021 to 2023. We truly appreciate your participation in the Yushan Forum and your staunch backing of Taiwan. And we are very much looking forward to hearing your observation and insight on issues of common concerns. 谢谢你，谢谢大家. Thank you very much. 谢谢.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Wu. Please return to your seat. And now we invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Ado Mantas, to have the floor. Please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I was born into a non-existent country that was erased from the maps, as its Soviet colonial masters thought, forever. Lithuania, as well as the other two Baltic countries, Latvia and Estonia, was occupied and incorporated into what Ronald Reagan termed the evil empire, the Soviet Union. But those countries did exist on the world maps, printed in the school textbooks in Taiwan. Taiwan, along with a score of free world countries, pursued a policy of non-recognition of the Soviet occupation of the Baltic states. This seemed, at the time, a quixotic, hopelessly idealistic policy. No one could imagine a force which could wrench those territories away from the iron grip of the communist superpower. Why am I saying this? Well, firstly, because I'm speaking in Taiwan, a country that is excluded from numerous political world maps globally. And secondly, also because in this episode, we see a clash of two paradigms of foreign policy, two geopolitical visions. One, which might be called politics of fatalism, based on perceived historical necessity to which individuals and nations must bow. It maintained that Marxist communism will eventually triumph globally. Opposing it was the value-driven politics, politics of principle, of belief in ideals of freedom, democracy, human dignity, and inalienable rights. And this hopelessly romantic, idealistic policy based on universal values proved to be victorious. The Iron Curtain collapsed. The brutal Soviet Union empire seemed at the moment to join the dustbin of history, along with the other evil empires, such as the Nazi Third Reich. Lithuania, along with other Soviet-occupied nations, such as Estonia, Ukraine, Georgia, and many others, regained their independent statehood and their rightful place among sovereign nations of the world at the United Nations. So great was the fall of the authoritarian dictatorships precipitated by the collapse of the Soviet regime that the free world assumed that the global victory of democracy is inevitable and it is just around the corner. That what we see, in fact, is the end of history. That it's only a matter of time until the whole world reverts to the liberal democratic model of governance. And thus, we entered another mode of fatalist politics, based on optimistic fatalism and historical inevitability, which assumed that democracy is bound to prevail. So there is no need to argue for it and we can seriously consent for it. Don't worry, it is historical necessity. We will all be democratic in the end. It took decades of democratic decline, of emergence of authoritarianisms, the tragedy of 9/11 and its aftermath, misguided wars in Iraq and elsewhere, and ultimately Russian war of naked aggression against Ukraine to disabuse us of this optimistic fatalism. However, this disappointment should not lead us into cynicism that the protection and promotion of the ideals of democracy and liberty no longer constitute a worthwhile, realistic policy goals. In fact, it is now more needed than ever. It is time for recommitment to the democratic ideal and renewal of the global narrative of freedom. It's time to renew democratic playbook and democracy's global ambition. I'm here as the Secretary General of the Community of Democracies, global coalition of governments committed to democracy, established 25 years ago by the great United States State Secretary Madeleine Albright. Our mission is to promote democratic resilience and concern for the global state of democracy. In order to do that, we have to recognize democracy's vulnerabilities. Democracy, as a functioning political regime, is a complex, subtle, and fragile system that requires constant effort to maintain it and constant vigilance. The fragility of democracy feeds fundamental asymmetries, which the adversaries of democracy exploit. Freedom of speech can be weaponized against democracy, which enables it, but not vice versa, as was the case during Cold War years, where the word of truth percolated to the citizens of the Soviet Union through Voice of America or BBC or Radio Free Europe, corroded the totalitarian regime's propaganda. Well, that is no longer the case. FEMI, disinformation, conspiracy theories, cognitive warfare weaken democracy because its legitimacy derives from citizens' will, which is based on their views, mentalities, outlook, and these can be subverted and poisoned with lies. But these very measures, disinformation, FIMI, they strengthen autocracies because it's easier to govern deluded, indoctrinated, and permanently deceived population. The polarization of the public arena and political field weakens democratic polity when a political opponent across the aisle may be treated with more bitter enmity than the foreign autocrat who seeks to subvert the very underpinnings of the democratic political order. The conditions of slow-burning civil war is deleterious to democracy, and it is very hard to get rid of. Whereas, on the other hand, polarization fuels the strength of tyrants who find it easier to govern by pointing out public enemies or scapegoats. Democrats are labeled as agents of the West in Russia, and so on. Finally, democracy, to succeed, needs complex, strategic, long-term decisions. But oversimplification always wins in the vulgarized, exacerbated political public debate. Furthermore, in the 1980s and 90s, democracy had dialectical advantage. It advocated a powerful, innovative vision of free, dignified, and prosperous political system and peaceful, progressive world order. The community of democracies was also formed at the time when democracy was on the rise, when it had this dialectical advantage. Not anymore. Now, democracy, dialectically, conceptually, is at a disadvantage. Champions of democracy are defenders of the status quo, often imperfect, dysfunctional, corrupt, compromised, and always boring status quo. Authoritarianism, on the other hand, has, at the moment, dialectical advantage. Autocrats are the challengers, the bearers of the new reality, however threatening and unsympathetic this new reality might be. This partly explains their success. Democracy has no vision, no goal to aspire to and move towards. Autocrats do. Their goal is to destroy the global order thrust upon them, as they claim, by the West after the World War II. So democracy needs to become proactive and assertive. It needs to regain initiative in global agenda setting. We urgently need to agree on and propose the vision and strategy for the new, better democratic global order. We need to rebuild powerful democratic narrative, adapting it to the realities of the 21st century, taking on board into its formulation as its integral part experiences and concerns of the societies outside the West. So this is the fundamental call to action for the community of democracies, for the community of free countries, to create and propose the vision of peaceful and democratic global order for the 21st century, and an ideal for our times, something to strive for, to give direction to our efforts. And I must emphasize what I ardently believe in, that Taiwan's rightful place is in the community of democracies and among the world's sovereign nations. We see now the rise of politics of aggressive nostalgia. Russia, which seeks to restore the Soviet Union, China, which hallucinates of the imperial superpower status, Iran with its backward, inhumane theocratic visions. Most recently, we're seeing worrying tendencies in the United States, desire to return to the status quo ante sometime in the past, simplified, idealized, idyllic vision of American greatness, unburdened by the complexities of modernity and isolated from global trends, to the past that never, in fact, existed. But there is no return to the past. We should embrace the politics of future, of openness to the future. Only moving forward can democracy reinvent itself for the 21st century. And Taiwan is the place where the future takes place, not only in technological innovations, but also in setting new standards and broaching new frontiers in democratic politics and practice of human rights. That's why this is the right place to start systematic thinking about bringing back democracy's ambition. The tectonic plates of the world order are shifting. The decades-long certainties are crumbling. It is a moment of precariousness, moment of threat, but also an urgent call to action, as well as a moment of opportunity. We should admit that autocracies do possess far from inconsiderable strengths. Their immense concentration of political will, unimpeded by diversity of opinions and institutional checks and balances, their powers of mobilization unchecked by concern for the well-being of their citizens, their long-term strategic thinking unhindered by electoral cycles. The only thing we can oppose to their strengths is the wealth of innovation, of constant dynamism, and diversity of solutions which arise from democracy's different histories and experiences, and which help us to face and overcome the challenges that time inevitably brings. Community of democracies is a place where bonds of solidarity in the face of common adversary, tyranny in all its forms, must be forged, strengthened, and reconfirmed. I truly believe that working together, we can create a democratic and dignified, peaceful and prosperous global order, because this is the deepest-seated, millennia-old aspiration of humanity. We can win this global debate, this fight over the founding principles of the future global order, but only together. And there is no time to lose. Thank you.